Hello, guys. Welcome to this new edition of Mind Podcast. This is Aadit Kapadia. I know this is on a very short notice. Normally, we give you guys a little bit of a heads up, but Pramod and I wanted to do a very quick live. This is going to be unlike our usual Mind Podcast where we do a whole 45-minute to 1 hour discussion. It's going to be a focused 35-minute discussion on what happened this week, what happened with Narendra Modi's visit to United Nations, what to make of it, and basically, just covering all the issues that have dominated the discourse this week. So with me is my compadre Pramod Kumar Buravalli. Hi, Pramod. I don't like. I hate you to welcome to Mind Podcast because आप तो हो ही यहाँ. So
हम सब बूढ़े हो गए हैं अभी. There are new members of overseas friends of BJP. Kamala, party is now joined the party.
Now, as usual, Pramod is going on his own.
So जिस तरह से the visuals of Narendra Modi ji's that conversation. Remember, there are some people who are giving memes. Narendra Modi is talking about Kashmir and she's talking about appadams or something like that. Funny memes going on, right? But it was such, the body language was so starkly different, Adit. I've seen like how many? 4 prime ministers visit the United States so far. Okay? This time it almost looks like school mein bachchi ko padhaya ja raha hai. Such mein, I mean, I don't know what they were talking about truly.
No. See, that is all. Those are all images are there for Twitter and stuff. And I think Prime Minister Modi met Kamala Harris. I think it was also to send a message to a lot of one section in the Democrats or something, that there is an engagement going on. So don't believe that there is a continuation going on from what the last establishment was to this establishment. India is still very important to the United States, and so stop thinking that you'll use these propaganda arms like some activist organizations and try and give India a bad name, so to speak. But what I want you to draw your attention on was not only, his camaraderie with Biden was very evident. I want you to talk a little bit about why the Quad meeting was so significant. And then we'll get to the United Nations, and then we'll get to the bilateral. But the highlight of this visit was Quad. So that's what I want us to discuss.
Absolutely. And the whole speculation that the AUKUS military alliance, which was in the offing for almost 5 to 10 years, because there is another preceding agreement to this, which involved Canada and New Zealand as well, which only had military intelligence sharing kind of agreement, and there's some sort of a gentleman's agreement that if one country gets attacked, the other country will come into defense. This was the Anglo-Saxon Gora alliance of Canada, US, UK, then Australia, and obviously now South Africa also wanted to get into that, but then India weaned them away into a different alliance. But I'll come to that. Now, the whole speculation was the AUKUS alliance was meant to dilute the Quad, right? And this submarine deal gone wrong with France, which essentially led the way for Australia acquiring nuclear submarine technology, which they have been, resisting for a long time. But considering the aggressive moves that China has been making in Indo-Pacific, Australia feels that it is their right to acquire at least nuclear attack submarines without the nuclear weapons. By the way, these are only SSNs, which cannot discharge nuclear missiles yet. Okay, but what has Quad achieved when it comes to the whole architecture of the Indo-Pacific is being realigned to make way for India and Japan to have a larger say in things. Australia is obviously very, very much interested in diverting a lot of its trade, which is dependent on China, by the way. They lost $20 billion just the past 18 months because of the spat that has been happening between China and Australia. They lost all the supplies that they were getting from China.
Yeah, so this is a very important point, right? What to make of the Chinese question? And what to make? Will it be Quad or AUKUS, or will it just be a supplemental of both? And most strategists believe that ultimately both of them have to work together because they are working towards the same principle of countering a resurgent China in the Indo-Pacific.
Yeah. Absolutely. But the only underlying story in this is that the AUKUS was an existing alliance minus New Zealand and Canada, which are now more, sort of non-aligned than before. They have kind of a very sort of a reluctant admittance that China is a global menace. So the only three countries that understands the realities and have the military capabilities, right, are UK, Australia, and obviously the United States, which have cemented their alliance by sharing of this nuclear technologies. These, for all I know, would probably the crews would all be American in the initial few years, and then it will transition over to a trained Australian crew. But that doesn't mean the military to military understanding that the United States has with India. Ever since the Indo-US nuclear deal in 2008, I don't know if the nuclear technology per se in peaceful, nuclear energy has been shared or not. But it is a fact that India has been given at least the nearest and latest and greatest military technology when it comes to the Navy, when it comes to certain strategic systems, intelligence sharing. That has been unprecedented, and this has been bipartisan. And you got it right. Okay, it doesn't matter who is in power. This is a relationship that is getting stronger by the day, undeniable. And they all know that the problem is with Pakistan and China and India. Minus a few hiccups. There's not a whole lot of sort of pain points between these four countries, actually.
So what to do with the Pakistan question then? The Pakistan-China question, and clearly with the rise of the Taliban in Afghanistan, China seems to be a anchor, so to speak, in that relationship with Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the West. And they're playing China is playing as much of a dubious role when it comes to the Taliban, because they are not saying anything, neither are they doing, but then they're also pushing for certain things. So how do we deal with that?
Yeah, see, China is getting into a zone which was vacated by the British, by the Greeks in the past, by the British, by the Soviets and Americans. So we should welcome China and their investment into Afghanistan. If they can finish some of those infrastructure projects, if they can ensure safety of passage for their own people in and out of Afghanistan, all good luck to them, more power to them. Obviously I don't want the Afghan people to be left to the wolves, so to speak, right? At least with China in present there, we hope that the Taliban will not wag its tail like it used to in the past. There's somebody. China is not a pushover, Adit. If you see, even in the CPEC projects, although there were many hiccups with the Baloch rebels, with the some other factions, that wanted to create trouble in the CPEC, those projects have still gone ahead in spite of all the hiccups. So China did take into account that there will be risk. And if that is the same risk and they want to have a clear access to the Arabian Sea and continue their sort of Belt and Road initiative through Afghanistan, more power to them. Everybody has tried and failed. Maybe the Chinese will. Who knows, Or they also have better technology to safeguard Taliban from extremism. Case in point, Xinjiang province. Such a
that point is such an oxymoron. China has better technology to safeguard Taliban from extremism.
Yes, because that is what they're doing in. Yeah, that is what apparently they're doing with the Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, right? There are now.
This statement is like, make sure you take an umbrella in the swimming pool to protect yourself from the water that's coming from the top, so that you don't get wet.
Yeah, the Chinese seem to have a solution to everything. They just put everything in a silo and they train them. They clear. I mean, clean-shaven Taliban would be a good sight. I mean, literally.
Pramod is getting into all sorts of trouble on this, but no, you're right. I mean, the point is well taken. That interestingly, no one has had any success whatsoever in the Afghanistan region. So China is well to try out, but the thing, it's known as the graveyard of empires. So maybe the counter to a resurgent China that has expansionist idea is it goes to Afghanistan and realizes bhai hum jidhar hai wahi theek hai, we don't want to go further.
That is exactly what's going to happen. Mark my words, in the next 10-15 years, China will feel the weight to support Taliban infrastructure. They haven't even recognized the Taliban government yet, right? That is the first step, to provide sanctity to and recognition. If once that happens, that means aid will come in. Why does any country whether you're de jure or de facto ruler of a country, the first thing you need to is unfreeze the funds that are lying outside, right? How do you, for example, I'll just give a simple example. There's Afghanistan's embassy in Delhi, right? Now, after the Taliban has taken over Afghanistan de facto, but they are de jure, not still, they're not recognized as the ruler. So all the funds that were allocated by the Afghanistan government under Ghani still go to the embassy staff, salaries, and all that for the next maybe 6 months or so, right? After which nobody knows what's going to happen. But that is the dilemma that Taliban faces. They have not done mass executions yet. They have not shown their true colors yet, only because they need that sanctity. And that sanctity will come from China only after it imposes a heavy sort of, and everybody knows, everybody in Africa knows, everybody in Sri Lanka knows, in Bangladesh, in Myanmar, what kind of toll that that sort of conditions of Chinese support will get, to Taliban, right? So I think and in the beginning, I was feeling very upset and depressed by the exit of the United States and the NATO away from Afghanistan, because there is a lot of good people that felt betrayed. But then now a little bit of hope has come in, because Chinese terms and conditions are entirely different. Okay, they are going to really have their pound of flesh, and there's still $1 trillion worth of minerals left in Afghanistan, Adit, that needs to be mined, and Chinese are really good at it.
No, then one could argue that what has happened in Pakistan and Baluchistan specifically, with all the mineral rich, one doesn't want the Afghan people to suffer that sort of instability and stuff like that, and one hopes for that the Baluchi people get some sort of relief from the relentless assault that they are facing. But pivoting a little bit, and we'll come back to Pakistan and Afghanistan when we discuss Prime Minister Narendra Modi's United Nations speech. Pivoting a little bit to Prime Minister Modi meeting President Joe Biden. I think this was a very important meeting for one reason. I mean, anytime an Indian leader and an American leader are meeting, it is significant. It is more important than usual, because there were a lot of skepticism. There was a lot of skepticism in the post-Trumpian world if the relationship will continue. I, for once, had no qualms about it, because Joe Biden essentially has been an extension of the Obama foreign policy, and the relation between, the camaraderie between President Obama and Prime Minister Modi, I think, was stronger than what you saw between Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump. But the only difference was that within the Democratic establishment, there is a certain arm, the far left in America, that may not be more that somehow wants to equate Narendra Modi with their completely wild conspiracy theory that grace the pages of New York Times and Washington Post. So how do you deal with that?
Well, you don't deal with it, you only deal with it with the disdain it deserves, and, Prime Minister Modi did an excellent job by not paying heed to the protests that were happening. There was counter protests happening by the Indian American diaspora. And as India grows, this is going to happen. A lot of people will try to gain leverage on India by citing issues that have been very traditional. It's a toolkit. Everybody now knows about the toolkit. You, me, Sunanda, and all of us have been talking about this template, this deep American establishment template, or the deep state template that has existed since millennia, right? Almost, I would say, about 100-year-old template that now the Indian establishment fully understands. If you raise this issue, then we will also ratchet it up by raising it, because the respect that the American establishment has had across the world has waned, Adit. And this is, again, how lucky can Narendra Modi be?
Maybe now a certain GPS on CNN News will find its India location very fast. So I'm just going to.
We are living in a time where a country is represented by a leader who has come openly. He's speaking in Hindi. Never happened before. Okay. He's talking via an interpreter. He could have spoken in English, right? He didn't do it. And you've had all these industry CEOs, in spite of what's happening across the world, making a beeline to establishment large presence in India. Now our people are almost insisting, like a policy in Make in India. They cannot basically sell anything unless that entire technology is transferred, replicated. You saw the negotiation with Airbus. Okay, a year and a half ago, Airbus was not willing to give the C295 technology, but as soon as France got kicked out of the submarine deal, you see what happened? They immediately said only 16 will be manufactured in Spain, the remaining 40 under license to Tatas with transfer of technology. Every single CEO about a year and a half ago, this is Modi pre-2019, okay? 2 years is all it took for the global opinion to be completely changed about the Indian sort of thought process, and which is now they themselves will come with proposals of Make in India. They themselves will say, this is the parameters we need, and they'll make a beeline to India. And that's you see the Sensex and what kind of performance the Indian Stock Exchange is giving us.
It's fantastic. No, and you actually nailed a very important point. The global opinion, I think, in India was always favorable. They were always happy about the India growth story. I think the biggest problem with a lot of people was that the global op-ed pages did not line up with what the global optimism was. So they're like, why are the op-ed pages of New York Times, Washington Post, and other organizations not lining up? Because they are not analysts writing, they are ideologues. And you have to.
They're activists. They're activists.
Essentially.
Exactly.
So till we come up with that conclusion in our heads, because I have struggled with that how can you be so far removed from facts? Because if you're not a reporter or an analyst, and if you're just it's like think about 20,000 Arundhati Roy's writing. I mean, it's just like that, right? That Arundhati has just become that essentially these days. But but I digress on that. Coming back now to the known knowns, so to speak, of the visit. There are three big points, right? One, that Narendra Modi and Joe Biden sort of reaffirmed the relationship, that it was a continuum from the Donald Trump policy, which was completely dehyphenating India and Pakistan. There was no, not only that, Prime Minister Modi actually reaffirmed about India's, faith in its own democratic principles, so to speak. It was a subtle jibe as well, that if your vice president can, or previous administrations can say certain things, we can give it back in the same tone. So I thought that was a great touch. The third thing was economic engagement still remains, because in the post-COVID world, that India-US economic engagement shouldn't end. And the last one, the fourth one, I said three takeaways, but there was a fourth one, is the strategic thing that pivoted straight into Quad. So can you expand a little bit on those, and then we'll go straight into Quad?
Absolutely. The intelligence sharing has been phenomenal. Balakot would not have happened unless the American deep state provided us that near accurate information, right? Now it's an open secret, which was that country that was providing that. It was obviously the CIA giving the information to RAW, and RAW also had its own sources to kind of validate that. And that has been a game changer, because when you look at the technologies that are now being offered, the MQ-9, the Predator drones, right? They're still the state of the art. Now, no drone can beat what the Predator can do, right? The P-8 Poseidon anti-submarine aircraft, which essentially can be right away after they take off from either Tanjavur or Tambaram or Arakonam, wherever they're based out of in Tamil Nadu, they can start tracking all the submarines all the way in the Indian Ocean. And if they fly a little bit towards Southeast Asia, towards Thailand, they can track the submarines off the secret base, the so-called secret base that China has off of Hainan. Okay, that is how much sensitive technology is being given, because essentially the United States has realized that they're stretched far too thin, Adit, and they have to now bank on India, Australia, and of course Japan has always been a very reliable partner in this kind of sensitive military technology. Two, immigration was always a big sort of a hiccup that people like us have gone through 10, 15 years of wait, right? Did you realize the past 7-8 months, ever since Biden has come to power, and again, credit to both Trump and Biden, Adit, about 150,000 people of Indian origin have gotten green cards. Just like that. Okay? Last I remember this sort of
that is also because of the freakish.
But I'm giving credit to both Trump and Biden, both. This is bipartisan, right? Last I remember this happening was because of Bush, Junior Bush and Obama. People like me got green cards in 2011. Okay, that sort of a way. So there's a 10-year sort of this thing, and imagine about 150,000 people becoming US citizens in the next 5 years. Okay, after their green cards, they get 5 years, right? So there is an acceptance of the positive things that the Indian American diaspora is doing, and they have literally agreed to expedite the green card process of many other hundreds and thousands of people, probably by paying extra fees. And finally, the economic imperative that the Americans have realized that the only country left to do massive business with in Asia is India. They're done doing business with China.
You can sort of be reliable. India is a reliable ally in a way that you are not going to see any major changed conditions in India.
No.
Right?
No.
With China right now, what America is saying is, कल उठ के हांगकांग पे धावा बोल दिया that we are going to do this analysis. कल Bitcoin को illegal declare कर दिया किसी एक बैंक ने. So with China, it's a very unreliable sort of thing, and it is essentially dependent on the whims of what Emperor Xi decides to do.
Exactly. And China is obviously made its investments felt in South America. Its investments in Africa have been huge. And the countries that have already been at the receiving end are beginning to repent it. And the only country now which can replace at least the aid part of it is India. So they know that the outreach, that, reason why these hundreds and thousands of deals are being offered for the Navy and Air Force is essentially so that at least somebody can continue that aid. Most of these countries are dependent on aid, Adit, financial aid. Even in the vaccine Maitri, that whole space was essentially earlier managed by Red Cross, which India took over, right? For 3 months. So you remember the vaccine Maitri whole diplomacy?
No. Hold on to that thought. That we'll cover in the last 10 minutes when we talk about Prime Minister's United Nations speech, because I want to talk just about the vaccines in there.
Yeah.
Let's move to the Quad now, and what that, guys, whoever are watching live on Twitter and things like that, you guys have been tweeting questions, but if you want to ask questions on the stream, do write to us. We can share it right here with those watching, and then we can definitely let you know what give our perspective on what you guys think. Let's come to the ideas on the Quad, right? How do you view the Quad now? Clearly, like we said in the beginning of the podcast, it has to be complementary with the AUKUS or something, or AUKUS. I forget. AUKUS. UK-US alliance. Quad has Australia and US just like there. So the only difference is really UK. And I have no doubts in my mind that UK can will be accommodated or something like that, right? Especially in the post-Brexit world. I just don't know how France is going to feel about that, but we'll talk about that. How do you view this? What is going to happen, you think?
It is going to have, like the Quad, declaration itself, going to have a lot of run-ins with China, because it involves what they call as free and open Indo-Pacific, because of the conflicts China has in the South China Sea with almost 7 countries, and the island sort of building measures that China is doing. A lot of these supply chains going through the Strait of Malacca will be affected by it, Adit. And as America moves towards a less dependent sort of economy, energy, essentially in the next 10 to 12 years, you will see it focused more on renewable energy rather than non-renewable energy. America's trade dependency, at least on the Middle East, will go down to a all-time low. At the same time, the trade that still moves, the supply lines that still moves through the Straits of Malacca or the Java Sea towards the Middle East, still the only country that can disrupt those supplies. So, United States also has to think on what it will take to basically encircle China, which is what China has been doing with this string of pearls. Now, there's a counter system of pearls that has to be developed. So militarily and also from a trade standpoint, India's arm of at least strengthening these ports. The port that India was almost completing in Chabahar in Iran, and a couple of port projects that are coming up in Mauritius and also in Tanzania will be strengthened by the Quad, which is obviously the financing will come from Japan. The United States is not in a position to do any financing for the next 1 to 2 years because of the COVID pandemic and the $2 to $3 trillion additional money it had to print. But at least Japan is in a better position to support those infrastructure projects, the counter string of pearls that India will continue to build. With Australia, with Australia and India, the biggest gain would be in materials that were originally sourced from China for obvious reasons, and the Australians want certain restrictions lifted. So maybe some sort of a free trade agreement specifically between India and Australia will be in the offing that will replace the raw materials that the Australians were sourcing from China. Now, as far as Japan is concerned, Japan is going through a little bit of a pain point in terms of political uncertainty, only because of Abe's. I don't know if Abe is wanting to return. There's murmurs of his return after Suga.
I doubt it, but basically, Mr. Suga saying that he's not going to come back is what has
right,
sort of
right. Right. But Japan also needs to be strengthened militarily after almost 60 to 70 years. They're coming out of that pacifist constitution, which basically wanted their entire military to be redesigned as self-defense force. Now they are building or rebuilding aircraft carriers. So there are certain things that obviously Japan needs that India can help in terms of technology. India has recently built a large aircraft carrier in Cochin, and they want that technology to transfer to Japan. So it's a very mutually beneficial relationship.
So before we go into the UNGA address,
yes,
we got a fascinating question. Is US going to sanction Pakistan in any sort of way?
Not immediately. I think they will wait to see how Pakistan will control the Taliban. And if, because there are already restrictions on Pakistan, there's no need to impose new restrictions. There's an FATF, they're still on that list. FATF, which is essentially the inability of Pakistan to move its own money from banks in Europe and elsewhere in safe havens. Has been heavily curtailed by this FATF list that they're included on. America is obviously going to watch if this ratcheting up by Pakistan. We just saw just a couple of days ago in Kashmir, some terrorists sneak into India, right? And there was an attempt to come in good numbers. So if those sort of ratcheting up by Pakistan happens to try to garner the attention, they're now going back to that same storyline that look, we are not able to control this Taliban. We are also suffering that same story, sob story. Pakistan is, basically parading to the rest of the world, right? If they continue doing that and India starts suffering, because now economic interest is at the center of Quad, by the way. It's not military, because to be very honest with you, the latest and greatest strategic technologies will never come from the United States for India. Okay, it will always either come from Russia or now France. France, which is so bitter, immediately after the AUKUS thing happened, Macron calls up Modi and says, "Modi bhai, kya chahiye?"
Use the correct term, Priya Mitra.
Priya Mitra, kya chahiye? Mitra is ready. Mitra has been ready for the past 6 years with the kind of technology that was denied even by France. France is no sort of.
My subtle joke on that is the word Mitra is now going global. It's not just limited to India.
So our Mitra is ready, and they are also desperate right now. They are going to lose a lot of jobs if India doesn't step in and sign that agreement with France for additional Scorpion submarines with AIP technology. Yeah, wo jo Barracuda submarines hai, that were literally going to go onto the shop floor are going to be diverted over to India, which is obviously a great.
So now I have to hit pause on this part of the discussion to jump on the United Nations speech, because I mean we are of course 5-10 minutes over time, but people are still watching us, people are still speaking to us, people are still liking the stream. So if you haven't done that, please hit like, subscribe, please retweet and share. Only when you guys show the love on social media are more people going to come watch, write to us, and we are going to even bring we are going to be able to get you even more panelists, more discussions and so forth. I have to do a little bit of housekeeping, guys. But back to United Nations speech today. It was a terrific speech. He ended with a very strong message on terrorism, Afghanistan, China. But let's go from where he began with, where he talked about the first DNA vaccine developed. Of course, the Zydus vaccine. I have to do a shout out, fellow Ahmedabadi, Mr. Pankaj Patel and his company Zydus Cadila. So, as you may know, when it comes to a little bit of issues like that, I get to play the proud chauvinist for 2 seconds, and then I go back to being the analyst. But no, seriously, it's a very proud moment for India. Very proud moment.
Yes.
That India has done that. India, Novavax and Serum Institute submitted their sort of doses, their application to the World Health Organization. So you're going to find a little bit of what's going on there. But I want to highlight his efforts on Vaccine Maitri, how they are going to now export more vaccines while vaccinating at record numbers this week. I mean, unbelievable. So what do you make, Pramod, of this speech?
Well, this is a breakthrough speech, of a statesman who's been in the making for 20 years. We'll have to do a little bit more digging to find out if this was an extempore speech, because Modi does not do written speeches, and he has never gone off on a script. And the last time I remember, it was Sushma Swaraj who was given a script, and she still had to go through the script several times to maybe match her oratory with that. But this was very well thought out and delivered in a very natural way. And it is almost like an elderly guru tutoring the world that, look, do we really need to fight amongst ourselves when the world, this was a unifying moment. This was a moment we could have all come together. Look at us, look at what we did. And it was in a very humble manner. It was not a proud, overconfident, or like a, it was not in a bragful manner. Okay. It was like saying, look, in spite of all that, in spite of our shortcomings and our own sort of issues, whatever we could do in those 3 months,
absolutely,
we could do it. And that is the embodiment of what we will continue to do. That is going to be the hallmark, the signature of our diplomacy around the world, right? Which is what India was always since time immemorial. And this man, he comes with a divine wind on his side, Adit. Divine wind. There's still so many countries that are struggling for vaccines. We are now at a point where probably in another 5 to 6 months, the vaccine production has ramped up. Not as many people would need to be vaccinated in India, so that excess supply, we have established those routes. Our Air India planes are available. The Air Force transport fleet is growing by leaps and bounds. Where will it be used? Remember, there was times when our people were sending Indian Navy ships to evacuate people who are in Yemen or other places. Now, this is exactly what he will do. He'll use the Navy and
as of 2 days ago, and as of 2 days ago, I'm quoting the Google data. I mean, the data has updated since, but more than 627 million people have been vaccinated with at least one dose, which is more than 45.9% of the population, the total population, right? Not just the eligible population. And then more than 220.3 million people are fully vaccinated. So, which is what that number obviously I think is close to probably 17% by today, because they are vaccinating people in the millions every day. So it is unbelievable what we've done. But so it was a two-part, right? When we talk about the carrot and stick approach, the carrot was the vaccination, that India wants to do diplomacy using the goodness. I mean, the vaccination, sharing technology, sharing cooperation, world cooperation, so to speak. We even got lauded by WHO for this. But then comes the other part of the speech, where Prime Minister said that we are not going to be, and he warned about Afghanistan not being used as a country to launch terrorism from. You cannot use, essentially he said, you cannot use terrorism as a state policy, which elements of the Pakistani state have done for a long time.
He did that in SEO as well. This was a continuation of the speech he had begun in SEO, where he mentioned clearly that this cooperation is excellent. All of us have to cooperate in trade and military wargaming and all sorts of technology transfers that we have learned from our experience and we have imbibed from the rest of the world. We'll be more than happy to set up schools and train you guys in our technology and all that kind of stuff. So, in fact, launch your satellites. All that can be facilitated. But then please be aware that if your territory is used against India, this is the first time, again, an Indian Prime Minister saying this openly. that if your territory is used directly or indirectly as a source of terror against India, as source of anti-India activities, then we will have to take attention, and will take action. And he repeated
Absolutely.
that in UNGA in a different way. In a different way, he said, this coalition that needs to be built is, well, do we want to safeguard lives? Do we want to safeguard the sanctity of human life, or do we want to use the life and throw it away? This is a beautiful architecture he built around COVID, and then the larger importance, because everybody has thought this through, right? Whether you're rich, poor, you're a strong country or weak country, everybody was the same during COVID. Who hasn't talked about it or thought about it? Bolo, kisne socha nahi? Even prime ministers, presidents, everybody got affected, right? Agar ye time mein logon ne baith ke nahi socha, they didn't think that human life is so precious to save, right? Who else can? And the prime minister is very beautiful, in the way he has conducted himself. It fills me with immense pride that we are living in a time where India is being appreciated, and all the negative sort of propaganda, no matter how many times you try, it's almost like we have a shield. That shield is the global goodwill that has formed around India, and it's
absolutely, and that is the ultimate message of the trip. So, and we'll discuss more in detail on that. But Pramod, before we even go any further, any recommendations you have for our viewers, listeners, because a lot of people are going to be viewing this past stream and listening to this on SoundCloud.
Well, I saw Bell Bottom. I saw Bell Bottom, and as I've always said, there are 10 points that you can find fault with Indira Gandhi. But the one good thing that she always did was to strengthen RAW, which is continuing to be a great asset of India. And the operations that RAW undertook during that time, when Indian Airlines and Air Indian planes were being bombed or hijacked, right, is amazing. And Akshay Kumar did a spectacular job in the movie.
But there are 3 or 4 things I want to say. I mean, first of all, this is based on an instance that B. Raman talks about in his book, The Cowboys of Raw, which is a must read for anyone, everyone listening, watching the podcast in whatever year I'm talking about. You listen to this 5 years from now or 5 months from now. If you haven't read that book, pick it up and read it. It's available on Kindle. Second, थोड़ी liberties ज़्यादा ले ली थी. I don't think Rameshwar Nath Kao, RN Kao sat so silent in every single meeting. I would be very angry the way Kao was portrayed in that movie. I wish they had done it a little better. Nor did the character of Akshay Kumar go and order around officers like this. I mean, they would be fired for doing that.
It doesn't happen like that.
But still, it's just a story of what India was up against, and it's a very interesting thing. I watched the other side. I just finished watching a show called Quota Factory that's just come up 2 days ago on Netflix. It's season 2. The season 1 is on YouTube, about how the IIT obsessed city of Quota deals with it. It's a fantastic show. And for me, the one of the best scenes was they're talking to a professor, where the professor is saying कि मैं कहीं जा रहा हूँ, and the students is like ये नहीं चलेगा. They're like मैं धरने पे बैठूंगा, मैं चक्का जाम करवा दूंगा instinct. The professor looks at him and he's like, oh JNU, वापिस आओ. ये IIT के लिए training हो रही है JNU. I just thought there was a fantastic line in that. But watch these. It's interesting things. But before we wrap up, closing thoughts. I think this was a very successful meeting. I think it set a great stage for engagement, and the apprehensions that both sides must have had with a new administration in the US and how it would deal with India and stuff. I think they have all been dissuaded. It's probably been as strong as ever.
The economy we don't have to say a thing. Look at the way the indicators are looking in the next 2 quarters. The kind of infrastructure that was silently built during COVID times. People were complaining कि ये जो migrant labor है उनको क्यों रोड बिछाने के लिए भेजा जा रहा है, ये क्यों उत्तरांचल में रोड लेने के लिए facing China किया जा रहा है. Look at the infrastructure that is being built in India. I saw a video on Nitin Gadkari's inspection of the Mumbai Delhi expressway, the world's longest expressway, access control expressway that is being built. Look at that world class. It has cut down Bombay to Delhi. There was times it took me 36 hours drive time. Okay. Not more than 3 years ago. Now that if it cuts down by probably it will go down to 12 hours. Okay, if you don't, there's like few stops here and there, right? 12 hours. Imagine the reduction in fuel consumption. Imagine the reduction in taxes or octroi or whatever state to state you have to pay. This is just one axis. One axis. Just started Delhi overnight. You are in Mumbai, Adit. 12 घंटे में, and the bullet trains that are getting.
On a lighter note, on a lighter note, Pramod, you never have to tell me the significance of highways. I could do a 2-hour podcast just on that.
Yeah, exactly. And you see, यहाँ पे the Houston Dallas bullet train करने में, high speed rail करने में, देखो imminent domain की वजह से, all the problems that are going on right now, they will probably lay that in 10 years. और कितना है 250 miles का 10 साल लगेंगे. देखो, India is
that is for a longer discussion on another podcast. But you're right, that ultimately infrastructure is where the thing is. Infrastructure, you revive a little bit of manufacturing and focus on recapitalizing the economy.
Absolutely, and the labor laws were the last problem, and they have tried their best to reform. It's an ongoing process. It will never be like one sort of solution to it. And obviously, our biggest next 3 years focus has to be on manufacturing and banking. Now because of this bad bank that they have created, all the non-performing assets are being transferred to that bad bank, and the recapitalizations of the banking institutions, lowering of interest rates, everything we have talked about for the past 7 years has been set into motion for this prime growth to happen. So you can imagine in the next 7 years, from 3 trillion, we could as well go to about 10 trillion. It's just like this because of this industrial hubs that, now that the roads are going to be pretty much world class, all you need is these, manufacturing plants set up everywhere. That's it.
Absolutely. Fascinating points, Pramod, and let's see how India-US engagement does. I appreciate every one of you guys joining us. This has been on a short notice. We did not plan this, but we wanted to do a short broadcast, and we're doing another show tomorrow with a friend on this. So please check out my Twitter feed. I'll tweet a link to that show, and we'll be doing many more podcasts this week and in weeks to come. Please like, share, subscribe on whatever platform you're listening or watching this one on. We'll be back next week or this week with more. Thanks again, Pramod, for joining. Always.
Oh, thank you. Next time, I'm pretty sure when Kamala party comes to India, Narendra Modi will gift her a pair of bangles.
No, if for any further questions, please ask Pramod. But please like, share, subscribe to Mindmakers, guys. We'll talk more very soon. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.